Everyone knows you should never take a physicist to a sci-fi movie. The same can be said about a biologist and a creature feature. We can point out how certain things are biologically unlikely or downright impossible, but that would be boring. So rather than pointing out what can't happen, why not ask ourselves, what if it was real? So using my super nerd levels of knowledge about biology, physics, and mythical creatures, my friends and I will explore how different creatures could have actually evolved on our planet and what they potentially would look like. Hello, and welcome back to A Real Creature Feature. Today we'll be discussing the Gorgons.
Gorgonzola.
I knew you were going to say that.
Of course he did.
I think you've already said it too multiple
I don't
times.
think I can. Well, I was going to talk about. Look, we can talk about cheese or we can talk about hot snake ladies, but we can't talk about both.
Oddly enough, we're not going to talk about both because one of the big things about her is that she's not hot. Like, literally, that's part of the story of Medusa. So I'm going to start off with a little thing. There is kind of a trigger warning for those listening. There is some discrepancy in the story that I'm reading, like the version. It's not, sometimes it's not all that consensual in the story of what happens, something that happens. Okay, so this is a very short synopsis of just Medusa. Legend states that Medusa was once a beautiful, avowed priestess of Athena, who was cursed by breaking her vows of chastity. Oh, celibacy. She was not considered a goddess or an Olympian, but some variation on her legends say she was the consort with one. Basically, what happens is that Medusa had relations with Poseidon. Athena got really angry about that, and Athena punished her. She turned Medusa into a hideous hag, making her hair into withering snakes and skin turn greenish hue. Anyone who ever locked gaze with Medusa would turn to stone. In some of the stories, what happens is that she's so ugly that that's what turns her people to stone, and so like that's the thing about it. It's like always kind of interesting and just like that's how mythology works, is that everything changes because it's a verbal tradition. So like the story can change to whatever people want, and that's why I was like, I don't know if it'd be officially or unofficially that she was raped by Poseidon, because that was some of the stories, is that she was raped by Poseidon and then got punished by Athena, which is really kind of messed up. But if it is that she was just was a consort to Poseidon and then was punished, it was like, okay, she, like, they had a contract or something, and she wrote out the dotted line, "Thou shalt not have sex." Okay, then I can understand, and Athena doesn't sound like a horrible, horrible person.
Another version is it was because of where they had sex that Athena got upset, because Poseidon and Medusa might have had sex on the altar in Athena's church.
Yeah.
No.
I
Sorry.
recently have listened to the audiobook where Stephen Fry has 3 different Greek mythology books.
Ooh.
And the other thing about Medusa is potentially that isn't even her true origin story, because she also has sisters
Yeah, I've
in
been
some of
looking
the
into that
stories.
one too. Also, yeah, she has sisters, and in some of them, it was Medusa was the daughter of. Yep, not gonna pronounce that. But she was also sisters with Ea and Echidna and Ladon as well. And no, Echidna was in like known as like the mother of monsters, so she like had a bunch of monstrous offspring. But the interesting thing is that Medusa, with the three, she's like of the three Gorgons, she's also the one that wasn't immortal, as compared to her other two sisters who were immortal. And that's pretty all you know about her sisters. Like, there's like no, like, that's the only part of the story that includes them. Stheno, and Ural, Uriel.
Uriel, yep.
That's what it looks like.
Uriel is, yeah.
No,
It's
Uriel is a different person.
No, Rufio is
Ye
another person.
Yeah, you Nah, I keep saying you. Euryale.
Uriel.
Yeah. But yeah, I was just like, that's interesting. Like all this stuff is just like we have like all this information that kind of works mashes together, but it doesn't really mesh. And it's like it also depends on who was telling the story at when and who was like writing stuff down at when.
Look,
But
this is
yeah,
the one. Look, this is the one where I might be a little out of my depths as far as talking about the mythology, because Dean is definitely more of the expert on that than I am.
yeah, which is understandable.
I
Uh,
get most of mine from Hades, so the Vigi
mhm.
game.
Yeah, and in some stories, I'm pretty sure she was in Hades
Yeah.
after she died from Perseus. Because yeah, she gets her head cut by Perseus, and then Perseus used her head to kill the Kraken. But I don't know if
Yep.
that was just only in Clash of Titans or actually was in the myths of
And
Perseus.
then Pegasus potentially came from her neck.
Yeah, her blood, which also it keeps getting weirder and weirder because it's like, a blood made Pegasus, but also the drips from her bloody head like made all the snakes of the world.
Hmm.
And I was like, this is weird. This
I
is
don't
what
know.
happens when you're just eating mushrooms around a
Right.
fire.
Even by like myth standards, this is actually seems pretty. This seems pretty standard fare.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
But overly sarcastic, Red goes into really good breakdowns of the histories of the legends and where
Mhm.
different offshoots probably came from, as far as what we know from history and what's written down,
Yeah.
Mhm.
when certain changes. My favorite of hers was Dionysus,
Oh.
Oh yeah.
and how Dionysus eventually changed to, what he became most popular for.
Mhm.
Yeah, and but yeah, that's always the interesting thing about the oral traditions. It's just the fact of because there's so many people like, oh, how old is that story? Well,
Depends
we
on
don't
which version.
know. We don't know because people didn't write things down, so could be anywhere from a couple hundred to a couple thousand years.
Yeah.
Because everybody knows it starts with Greeks and then it goes to Romans, but they don't realize there's a culture before the Greeks that
Yeah,
bunch of these gods and goddesses came from.
Yeah. And
yeah,
where are those guys now? They're all dead.
they live inside us technically
I don't
in our
know.
genes.
I don't want.
Yeah,
Ew.
messy genes.
Ew.
But yeah,
I
oh
don't.
yeah, this was something. It was Medusa was one of the three Gorgons, daughters of, like I said, not going to pronounce that, sisters of Greasus, Echidna, and Ludon, all dreadful, fearsome beasts. A beautiful mortal Medusa was the exception in the family until she incurred the wrath of Athena. And yeah, so that was the interesting thing about it is like she started off like a normal woman, bam, change. So, and that's the one of the big things that I kind of wanted to talk about early on in this was the difference between what would be considered like an artificial species as compared to
Mhm.
naturally evolved species. Because of like a lot of these things, a lot of these creatures and myths that we will eventually talk about aren't natural in the sense of that they evolved from something earlier on. Unless you're thinking like directly like, oh, the gods reached down and transformed this creature into something more. Today our basic outline will be if a Gorgon evolved naturally on our planet. So there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be different about the overall look and appearance to make it make some kind of sense.
course.
I'm going to go right off. No boobs. I'm sorry.
Well,
No boobs.
now,
Boobs.
look, I'm gonna say this. Probably yes. But what if, just saying this, what if they could as essentially a honey trap?
I have a great response to that eventually.
Okay.
So basically, not eventually, right now, are they going to have legs?
Well, you're asking a good question, and in the traditional sense, at least as far as we know of them, no. Usually,
Yeah.
Gorgons don't traditionally have legs. They have this. They have the snake They have like go from like torso to when you get to the privates, it becomes very snake-like in a lot
Yeah.
of art and a lot of
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't think there's going to be much of a honey trap for a giant snake.
Well, it's all about how you lay the trap.
Yeah, and
And
also,
so okay, fine. No creative honey pots then, is that what you're saying?
yes, no creative honeypots.
Ah,
So this was actually kind of cool. I was looking up stuff about. I was like, I wonder why snakes lost their limbs. And it just like in evolution, you're not going to actually have a definitive answer because that's just not how it works. But we do have a possible mechanism of why the limbs don't grow. Because what happens is, you still kind of have that DNA present for at least a while for them. And I found something very interesting that you will enjoy.
are you sure about this?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
So this is from the NPR.
Yay, the
How?
The
NPR.
Yeah,
NPR.
yes, the NPR.
Not just
Uh,
any NPR.
yes. How snakes lost their legs. That was what the article was called. As co-author and molecular geneticist Professor Martin Cohn tells the two-way, a gene known as sonic hedgehog is responsible for limb development.
Hello.
That is actually what it is called.
We've
So
got
you're
Sonic
telling me that this
Hedgehogs
guy got to
inside of
name
us?
the gene Sonic Hedgehog?
I don't know if he named it, but he is talking about that particular gene. It's not that somebody named it that. I don't know if he did it.
Somebody must move quickly, apparently.
Well, it's about limb development, so
Yeah.
legs. And the
Yeah,
person was probably just a nerd. So,
I'm
a
sure.
Florida researcher found that the sonic hedgehog gene flickers on very briefly in python embryo development, less than 24 hours. So, the reason why this came about, or like
Mhm.
what they're talking about it, is when you look at boa constrictors, a lot of them will actually have these little leg nubs that are just
Okay.
there, and that is what they're talking about. Like during the development of the embryo, that gene gets activated for a brief amount of time, and that's why they start to develop, but they never really do anything.
How many do they have then?
Two limbs, I
Yeah.
think they're like, if you look on, depending on the particular species, they have these little leg nubbins. I know, like near the
Okay.
bottom by the tail.
I was wondering if it was the potential to be 4 at that point. It's if they have anything for like an upper set, an upper set. Bleh.
Oh, maybe, but I just thought that was really kind of cool. Basically, so yeah, you need the sonic. He explains that limbed vertebrates, sonic hedgehog controls the development of many organs, not just arms and legs. DNA regulatory sequences called enhancers control the way these genes switch on and off for
Hmm.
specific body parts.
Is it
Without an
going?
enhancer for the limbs, sonic hedgehog, I keep on saying the, but it actually is just says Sonic Hedgehog,
Yeah.
could not make them fully develop. The researchers found that several sections of the DNA in the enhancer were deleted at the same point during the Python evolution.
Hmm.
So I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Ultimately, it really matters that much in this particular case of what we're talking about because, like I said, she's gonna have they, because it's a whole species that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna say has arms and a snake body. So basically, it would have been beneficial for them to lose their legs, but still maintain like keeping their arms through evolution. So it's like a lot of snakes, like they talk about, like they're good at burrowing and stuff like that. And I was thinking about that. I was like, but the whole cool thing, like snakes, is like they have like less friction because they can just wiggle through things. So I was like, that would also kind of mean that their arms would be like they wouldn't have that well of developed of like shoulders to stick out all that much. So they would either have like way more compressible rib areas and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that, so they can just like collapse their
Yeah.
shoulders in, and then when they need them out, they can just go. Blah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are, and obviously there are species of mammals that can do that, like
Mhm.
like mice and
Yeah,
rats can do that.
they can squeeze.
Yeah.
What was it? The size of a quarter they can squeeze through,
Yeah.
depending on the species.
Yeah,
Just like,
they can constrict, and as long as like with cats, the whole thing is it's their whisker length that determines
mm,
that. Because if they can get to their if they can get to the length of their whiskers, they can squeeze through it, and
yeah,
that's like their judgment point. So like when they start sticking their head in, if their whiskers scrape any side of it, they're like, nope, we're not doing this anymore.
yeah.
And
which
cats are scientifically just water.
Yeah.
yeah, I've seen
Their
the
cats are liquid. Yeah.
because it was what talk about like seeing like people spelunking and going through giving, and I'm like, I wouldn't want to do that.
No.
I wouldn't want to be able to crawl 200 feet through a little hole that I have to wiggle through. I'm too big of a person. I'm
Yep.
not even claustrophobic, but that's just like nope.
Well, I mean, but I'm kind of SOL.
I'm
That's
going to die, and
if I'm not.
eventually we're probably going to talk about it because there is a podcast called Super Duperstitious that did go into this because they're like talking about like movies like The Descent or
Yeah.
Subterranean Species, and the interesting and this actually can correlate with this because a lot of snakes can be semi-subterranean, like
Yeah.
they go into the ground and they come back out.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of food down there. This thing could probably have like that whole collapsible chest area and then like be able to wiggle through and then be able to pop up wherever it needs to
Yeah.
for food purposes. Yeah. So and that like why they were like talking about it was like that it wasn't like an overnight thing that these that snakes lost their limbs. It
Yeah.
was also that they just like slowly but surely that
I don't care for snakes that much at
Um,
all. It's and I always feel this way with when it comes to snakes. I don't feel like my fear is irrational.
No.
It's just this.
well,
My fear of snakes is not irrational in the sense that this snakes are definitely necessary. Snakes are definitely necessary. They're part of the ecosystem. I have no problem with that. They leave me alone. I leave them alone. We're happy. But I will say this. But my fear is not irrational. It is some snakes are venomous. Some snakes are not. Some venomous snakes look a lot like the venomous ones. And so, you know what? I'm just going to stay away from all of them because you know what? We can all live a happy life separate from each other in this case.
so this is also I took a herpetology class in college.
Oh,
In herpetology, you learn about snakes, snakes, reptiles, amphibians, blah, blah, blah. One day, my professor had a bunch of exhibits, like all around in the lab. And I am a person who likes to sit at the same desk every day.
yeah.
There was about a 10-gallon bucket sitting next to my spot.
Was it full of snakes?
No,
Oh.
it was full of a snake.
Oh, singular snake.
Yeah.
One.
It was a preserved cobra.
Preserved cobra?
Sitting up in striking position.
Ew.
And that's when I really learned that I'm not afraid of snakes, but I am afraid of venom snakes because of the eyes.
Ah.
Because I'm like, I've held snakes and I'm fine with them. But yeah, it was the venomous snake and it was just because of the eyes. And I'm like, because they're like, I could kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of
Yeah.
like the mature bull is like kind of like doesn't need to prove that he's the biggest, strongest. The venomous snake is just like, yeah, play and find out.
See, and I've recently heard this that now as part of the learning structure. I don't know if this is necessarily true, but because so many people are hunting rattlesnakes based off their rattle, the snakes are learning not to rattle anymore as a warning.
Yeah, I've heard something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're evolving to because it's a multiple step process. Yeah, the ones that don't rattle as much are outperforming.
Yeah.
The ones that we're forcing them to evolve.
Yeah. And now in a way that makes it more dangerous for people like me who just want to stay away from them.
Yeah, pretty
You're
much.
you're free. This is your place now. You're rattling. I get it. This is your home. I'll back away.
Yeah.
I'm clearly in your territory. I can leave.
It's our ability to selectively breed for things.
Yeah.
Even
Luckily
unintentionally.
for us in Wisconsin, we only have rattlers near Wisconsin-Dells and the Mississippi River. Like that's it. It's the west, the far west of Wisconsin. That's it.
Yeah.
Everything else we have like 27 species of snake and only 2 are venomous.
Yeah.
And they're all isolated in this one area where it's really rocky.
That's true. So that's why I don't go anywhere else. I spent 6 months in the desert. That's as close as I ever want to get to potentially meeting rattlesnakes. I've seen a couple, but I was never close enough to where it's like I even felt like I was in real danger.
That's good.
But yeah, it's because again, none of them came to work. None of them came to my work, and that was fine.
So yeah, okay. So yeah, we have it that, and they probably would also have, because I'm going off of like reptile hands, so they probably would only have 3 fingers and a thumb if they have any kind of digits like that.
I mean, that would make sense.
So they're cartoons.
Yeah, they're cartoonish. Yeah. But this is so the biggest issue that most of the stuff that we're gonna be able to just talk about and develop. It's like, okay, we have some kind of biological basis basis onto it. The biggest issue is the whole turning people to stone thing.
Yeah.
So in the book, Medusa's gaze and vampire bites. This was another article that I was reading, and I want to see what was the name. This is actually a book, Medusa's Gaze and Vampire Bites, and it was written by Matt Kaplan.
Okay.
And he was trying to do everything like trying from a scientific perspective on this, and it was actually really interesting because they're like a lot of them were oriented towards, is Medusa's legend coming from people seeing fossilized humans? Is that where the concept of the petrification associated with? And I was like, that'd be interesting. Though I don't. Like, it would have to be. I don't think it would be fossilized. I think it would be like some kind of what was the volcano?
Pompeii.
Like something Pompeii related.
Yeah.
Because I don't think humans have been around, like humans have been around long enough to be fossilized.
Yeah.
And not only that would only be their bones. So like
Yeah.
that doesn't really make sense. But I'm like, there probably could have been other events like Pompeii.
Yeah.
Other
Because I'm like,
volcanoes.
yeah,
Yeah.
there have been all other volcanoes, but
And it's easy enough to have another like tribe of humans who get caught in one. Easy enough.
and I'm like, oh, that'd be interesting. That would be where the idea came from. But ultimately, it doesn't matter to our story
No.
or our creature that we're making up.
Yeah.
But it was actually kind of interesting. So there is one of my favorite authors, Shauna McGuire. She has one of her many book series, because this lady writes like 3 books a year.
So many books.
Yeah, and a lot of short stories and comics and a whole bunch of other stuff. I don't know how she even sleeps.
She's
I don't
in
even-
competition with Brandon Sanderson as far as
Oh.
how many books
Probably.
written.
She says that like for one of her series, it's the October Day series, and I guess one of the jokes was that she's going to have 3 more than Butcher for the Dresden Files. Like, that's how long she's
Wow.
going to go.
Jeez.
And like, it was just because I don't think there's I don't even know if that's a real joke by her.
Yeah.
But in her series, the Encrypted series, basically it follows they're a family of cryptozoologists. But there Gorgons are real. There's 3 species. There's the greater, lesser, and Plinies. And like it was all kind of really interesting, but like how they don't really explain the mechanism of how petrification works. But it was this kind of interesting thought that it was a visual allergy that caused somebody who locked eyes with a petrifier, gaze-based petrifier, long enough that it would just start a chain reaction. And I was like, well, now that does actually make sense for chemistry and stuff, because you can have a cascading effect. Now, making it that you have a cascading effect via visual stimuli, that's something I have nothing I could ever grasp with. Like, I would need some chemistry and also radiation ology people.
Well,
I'm like,
I mean, yeah. Oh, go ahead, Dean.
What if instead of spitting from their mouth a venom that causes you to petrify, it sprays from their eyes?
like the tear ducts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey.
which could make sense. So there is the horny toad.
Yeah.
It's a
It
spiky.
spits
It's a
blood,
spike.
right?
Yeah, it spits blood out of its eyes to
Yeah.
scare away. That actually is a good idea. Yeah, and it would still be like an eye based attack. And
Yeah.
something evolved to be like that, and that could cause a chain reaction. That would be interesting. And in the realm of making somewhat biological sounding, rather than they emit a radiation from their eyes, and that's what does it. Blah blah blah. Though, like I said before, for the original, like I think the original story is like it was just because she was that ugly, and that's what turned people to stone.
All right, that's it. I'm calling it now. How about instead of from the eyes, how about from the chest eyes?
No.
Dude, I'm fighting you on this. I want
With
snitties.
breasts.
I demand snake boobs. Too much mythology to not have snake boobs.
No. I'm putting my foot down on that one. No,
No.
reptiles do not produce milk. They do not have mammary glands.
I'm not saying that they don't have to produce. I'm not saying she's producing milk. I'm saying she's producing chemical burns.
But then also I was kind of thinking about it like this too, where so you remember in Jungle Book Shere Khan?
Yeah, Tigger. Yep.
his
Tiger.
eyes,
Yeah.
not Shere Khan.
You're thinking about
Ka.
Ka.
I was thinking of
Yeah.
Ka. Ka could hypnotize people with his eyes.
Mhm.
So you're so scared, or another idea, you're so scared that you freeze.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that would be, if you don't want to do some kind of biological like mechanism or anything, like, oh no, it's a metaphor. She's not actually turning you to stone,
Yeah.
but she's gonna scare you so bad that you're gonna freeze.
But I mean, that is a psychological response, like fight or flight. Freeze
Yeah.
is the third option.
Yeah. Fight, flight, freeze, friend.
Falafel.
Yeah.
Ooh, let's get falafel after this.
But yeah, so I was like, oh, you could have it that now what you said, yeah, the eye spray, which would be kind of cool, and that is then it's not going to be in the way of let's say mouth, so that you can eat and like not and like have something in your mouth and still be able to use it. So that would actually be a pretty interesting thing. So that yeah,
Yeah,
good idea, Dean.
nice.
You did it.
I
Oh, you
thought
did.
of something.
You did a thing.
I also have a great mechanism around. Here's the problem with the whole snake hair thing.
Okay. Can I give a guess on that?
Yes.
Too many individual pieces on that of like
Yeah.
too many things. Yeah.
And also digestion.
Yeah.
So the thing about that is they would have to have their own digestive system in like each snake like would just be basically adhered to the end of her scalp.
Mm-hmm.
So each one would have to have its own individual digestive system, and so then she would have to feed each snake individually,
Yep.
so that they don't die. And the reason why that is that it either would have to have like a way you would have to have a super complicated circulatory system to explain how those snakes can just survive up there, because you couldn't have that they have a digestive system that goes all the way down to her digestive system or something like that, because it's just not enough room for that. Because you have to remember, things take up space.
Yeah.
Like the reason why we're big as we are is because we have all these internal organs and all this blood that's getting pumped through us. And with all that stuff added into let's say 20, 30 snakes next to you,
Yeah.
that's a lot of things that we're gonna have to go through neck to up
Yeah.
to her scalp. So yeah, I'm like they would have to have an individual everything,
Yeah.
or everything has to be connected through her. And I'm like, that's just really complicated.
No.
Now,
Oh, sorry.
oh, I did have an alternative.
Okay.
Now, this one actually, I was like, oh, this would actually be kind of cool. So, alligators and crocodiles,
Never heard of them.
big old lizards, and they have a tendency to keep their babies on their backs and
Mhm.
also in their mouths.
Yeah.
So let's say this is a real creature, and one day this giant snake thing was spotted by a human, and they saw all these snake things rivaling around their shoulders and heads. That would look kind of like hair, snake
Yeah.
hair. So I was like, oh, that'd be kind of neat to have it. Like it was not that it's hair, but that's where they keep their babies when they're young.
Could be. I
And I
mean,
was like,
there's
that's
also
a
yeah. I mean,
and
there's
then and best thing about that is because a lot of reptiles don't actually have the same kind of affection as we do.
yeah.
She could just grab those and throw them at their victims.
Neat. Could be. And I mean, it could also be this way. Would a now in the traditional now in a lot of sense, reptiles tend to have a weird mixture, kind of have a weird mixture. Would a gorgon have a live birth and then it would
Yeah, that would be actually very interesting, because that's actually the thing about snakes. I think it's ovoviviparous.
Yeah.
Basically, they still have eggs.
Mm-hmm.
They all snakes lay eggs,
Yeah.
but some of the eggs are hatched inside of them.
Yeah.
And that's when they give birth, and they give birth to
Yeah.
and that's really and same thing with like sharks, because yeah, a lot of sharks will have live birth, but they're
Yeah.
still oviparous.
Spelled with
So I'll go back to like at least the
EEWES.
evolutionary part.
Okay.
Here's the thing about it is, snakes don't have ears.
Yeah.
So this also would have to be at a point like when they broke off, before they lost their ears.
Now, do snakes have
Because
yeah. Oh,
because
sorry.
like they don't they can hear, they just don't have they don't have ears, so they can't hear without like basically having their jaw on the ground.
Ah.
So like that's why I was like, you would need to, and since this thing has arms, so eventually they'd be able to do the whole stand up thing like a cobra does. which is interesting because basically when a snake's doing that, he's deaf.
Yeah,
But
interesting.
so it was like, oh, that'd be a kind of an interesting idea. I was like, oh, maybe not have that because you need to have when you have arms, you need to be able to,
Mm,
have a purpose for them. Kind of like you need that you're going to be able to manipulate your environment. So
okay.
if you need to have your head on the ground to hear, this
Yeah.
would be very bad.
Hmm.
Oh, and by this audience, I was waving my arms like I just didn't care.
Yeah. We should do that more often.
Yeah.
Put our hands in the air, wave, show off to the snakes. Look at this. You can't do this.
Yeah, but they can taste with their tongues. So can we. They can
I yeah.
smell with their tongues. Hmm.
But you
They can
yeah,
smell with their
yeah,
tongues,
man.
yeah.
Wait, what wait, what was your degree in again?
Shut up. I got there. I corrected
Uh,
myself right away.
yes, yes, you did. It was there's gonna be this beautiful half-second pause that's just going to be inserted in there. They can taste with their tongues. Shit, so can we. I meant
Yeah.
to say this.
Yeah. And they can
Oh,
tell direction of where they're tasting with their tongues.
yeah, get that straight out of the air. But fine. So again, so in that concept, I mean, there's a lot of things like there would have to be an, as far as that goes, there would have to be a long chain before we end up with Gorgons even showing up, period.
Oh, 100%.
But
That's like, yeah, this is fantasy and science fiction is so that some of these species didn't evolve on the same planet as Earth.
yeah,
So, like, the rules and laws can be slightly different. Now, if it comes from a different universe, the laws can be drastically different from our laws.
hmm,
Like, just if we have a planet from our universe, the laws of physics are going to be the same throughout our entire universe. That
yeah,
doesn't mean it's that same thing with all universes. Some universes might have different laws, and
yeah,
that's actually like possible in like actual physics, like allows
yeah.
for that.
Well, yeah, and why wouldn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
that'd be disingenuous to living in a universe where the rules of physics don't even apply depending on where you exist in the universe.
yeah. It's like no, because then a lot more weird stuff would happen, and then that would also mean that the rules can just change on you
Yeah.
while you're moving through your own home universe.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of it's really like the more we learn, the less we realize we don't know.
The more we realize we don't know.
The more we know,
I
the
think
less
like how
we
you
know.
said it was weird,
Shh.
but yeah,
Why
and
won't you deflate?
because I'm not a balloon.
But now,
But yeah,
yes,
and that would be kind of cool. And the best thing about like if it was on a different planet that fully evolved, that would
yeah,
mean that there would be a nice variation between different subclasses, different species. So like you could just have Lamia or something like that. Or
mhm,
maybe like so the Naga in different
yeah,
mythologies have multiple heads. So maybe they could have evolved in that sense of having one main head and then eventually it had the branching off, like not branching off, but like consolidating idea. And they just
yeah,
have like a really big neck. And that's how they have all that other space for all the other arteries and veins and for blood
yeah,
circulation for
yeah,
their snake hair because like that's so this is
eh,
a great example like or explanation for that whole snake hair need take too much
mhm,
space for neck
yeah,
idea is so if you think about Wolverine they always have like oh yeah his claws that pop out of his arms so think about how thick each one of those blades is
yeah,
so basically, what would happen is when it retracts back in, that's
yeah,
how much wider his forearms would get
yeah,
because it would be pushing out of the way all that material,
He
and also
could
all the muscle and
his
tendon
hands like
stuff.
this.
He could, if he had his wrist bent, the blade would go through his wrist like that.
So I think what Dean's trying to say, and I think he got a little bit drawn out with your talking.
Yeah.
What he's saying is like it would have to go all the way back to his wrists, so that then he
Yes.
could keep his wrist bent. So he
Yeah.
could
Oh,
then,
yeah. No. In depending on the storyline, it's goes all the way into his forearms.
yeah,
So yeah, if he had his wrist bent, it would just pop out through his wrist rather than his knuckles. But the point is though that like all the mechanisms internal, like we don't have the muscles and everything else in our
yeah,
forearms to allow the retraction and pushing out of blades. So
yeah,
his forearms are gonna be giant no matter what because you have a lot of muscle and stuff in your forearm so that you can move your hand.
Popeye is Wolverine.
Actually, that would be a good idea. Yeah, he would need Wolverine or Popeye-itis arms probably,
Yeah.
but that would be like really weird on someone who's like 5'3". But yeah, and so that's the thing. Same thing with like all these different creatures that we'll eventually also talk about. Is like you need to have space is a commodity. Like there's a reason we're only as big as we are, and like why are, like I said it before in the wyvern ones talking about digestion. It's like the reason why our digestive system is as inefficient as it is because we have big brains. And
Yeah.
that takes up a lot of juice and a lot of blood.
Yeah.
So if we had a giant snake person who also had snake hair, that's a lot of blood that's being pumped to those snakes. So not as much going to their brain. So they'd also be dumber if that would be a thing.
So their males are more fixated on using their other brain as well, just
Yeah.
more than humans.
Hmm.
Hence why they have so many children on their hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at them brains.
Yeah.
So
could be.
now,
I'm connecting it.
see, now that you brought up Lamia as a, what would be the odds? Like, would it be more likely that if something were to happen like that, could we end up with Lamia instead of Gorgons?
Yeah, I think a Lamia is a better overall like more realistic design in the sense
Yeah.
of like, because Lamia is just upper torso of a human and
Yeah.
snake.
Snake body
Yeah.
or snake lower half.
Yeah, though still, like you wouldn't get the whole, oh, it looks like a beautiful woman on the top, because I'm like,
Ugh.
here's the main reason why I'm saying that is because of human skin isn't all that protective
Mm-hmm.
as compared to snake scales. So why would you have the softest part of yourself on the top, like where you like need to get at to think, because you have to eat through your mouth. So if you have very fleshy skin, not the best.
Yeah. Well, I mean, eventually either they might develop the simple tools like we did.
Yeah, simple tools, yes, but then eventually, more than likely, all of them would be fleshy, weird-looking human skin. So think about that.
Look,
A fleshy snake.
look. All
Think
I'm
of the
gonna
fleshy snake. I don't
Help
want to see
it.
him.
I like the magic Lamia. I did see this one before.
But yeah, the magic Lamia. See, yeah, scaly.
Yeah. Oh,
And-
see. I mean, here's the thing. Both of them are equally beautiful to me in their own special way.
Audience, the first picture that we're looking at is the Grave Breaker Lamia from Magic the Gathering, right? It's magic.
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
that's
And
magic.
the second one, I don't know how to describe it.
I'll put it up on the Instagram. Don't worry
Yeah,
about
we'll put it on
Think,
Instagram. But it was like scaly arms,
Yep.
a pronounced spine and ribs, long straggly hair, and you can only see one red eye.
This is the snake woman that comes out of your TV after you watch a certain VHS video.
Yes, it does look like the Ring Girl. A
Yes.
snake, a Lamia version of the Ring Girl. It would also, I would love to see like the rib cage design.
Yeah.
Would be probably drastically different than, because what is a snake but just a long rib cage?
The snakes are danger noodles. They
Yeah.
are.
And since they probably, and also if they don't, they would have to have a sternum just to allow for having arm motion.
Yeah. I mean,
So yeah, it'd look still interesting, but then still have that kind of collapsy thing.
yeah, which I think, there's in some ways, there are some snakes that can do at least a little bit of that.
But then
I mean,
they'd
not-
also probably have to eat a lot more smaller things. Now that I think about it, because of being cold-blooded and everything else, unless they did evolve to be more warm-blooded-ish. But so snakes can eat things the size that their heads. A lot of them that they just go,
Yeah.
"Right."
Yeah.
But if they have a more developed jaw to allow for like communication and everything else, then that would also limit how much their jaw can really expand, because that's a lot of things that have to be able to go back into place properly.
Yeah.
As compared, and then also shifting all the stuff that allows you to talk.
Mm-hmm.
So like they would probably have to have a more specialized diet of smaller. They could still eat live prey and stuff like
Yeah.
that, but it like rats and
But-
because of hands.
Yeah, I was gonna say, wouldn't they?
rip
Yeah.
chunks and shove it in
Yeah.
their mouths.
I was gonna
So
say
that'd
they
be
could
different.
do a rip and tear with that because they would still have hands and they'd still be able to, at
Have
least in some
claws.
way, yeah, just bite through something. But
And that was also kind of a thing in the Shauna McGuire novel. So they had like different types of petrifiers. They had ones that petrified you from the inside out, and then the outside in. So the
neat.
outside in ones, basically you suffocate. You suffocate
Yep.
because everything just stops working. But you still had that gooey inner center that you can be
Mm,
eaten. And then the inside out will be you die because your heart stopped, and then oh, it's not going
yeah.
to eat your heart.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, that's
Interesting.
kind of neat because I'm like, yeah, what would be the purpose of flash frying or flash freezing basically your prey?
Yeah.
Unless you literally only eat silica or something like that.
Yeah.
But still, but then also why would you need to do that when you can just have it all like lying around? So yeah, it's all those stuff.
Now, question for you on this, because again, I don't know too much about snakes, which is probably why I have a constant fear of them. No.
Hmm.
But what the snake's diet, how often do they need
Depends
to
on the
eat? Are they like relative to their size? Like how much like do they have to eat once a day? Would they have
It
to eat?
depends on the species and depends on a couple different factors.
On how
Some
much they
can be
eat.
like fed like once a week, and
Uh,
some I think can even go even longer than that.
wow.
I know for like because this is alligators and crocodiles. I want to say this is the Nile crocodile. It's in Africa, the one I'm thinking of,
Yeah.
because like they only eat like once a year.
Yeah.
They gorge themselves basically once a year.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's like or once or like a couple times a year, maybe something like that, because it's like during like wildebeests. I
Oh yeah.
remember seeing this on like like that was during their giant migration, and that's the
Oh
only
yeah.
time they ever eat.
So yeah, so like the wildebeest is like hanging out there near their watering hole, and it's like,
Rah,
all right, yep, just that quick.
meh.
I
Yep.
know that there's like a python or anaconda where if it's had a relatively large meal, it takes, I don't know if it takes months to digest or after it's eaten, it doesn't take a month. Like it has to reorient a bunch of its internal organs and lay out to keep warm.
Yeah, because they need to be warm while digesting. I know that one because
Oh,
otherwise it won't digest properly.
And it's hard to move when you got a zebra in you.
yeah. So what do they? So would the Gorgon then also be? Would that be cold blooded too? Considering it's still, or would it still be warm blooded with
Well,
all
since
other
that's the thing about it too, we're talking about supernatural things. The bloodedness goes out the window because they
magic
have
blood? Got it.
yeah, they have magic blood. But because that's when like
Because they got
sh-
mixtures of both.
she's basically she is a demigod. Like
Yeah.
when she was normal mortal, and so she's like the rules kind of go out of the window. So I'm like I'm not
Oh,
gonna go with anything. But from our perspective, they would probably be cold blooded just because they're giant snakes
so I mean, they could.
or
So if they lived in,
snake-like
yeah,
things. They're giant
yeah,
reptiles that look like snakes. The branch would be something else. It would be not. They wouldn't be technically snakes.
yeah. So they'd have to. So probably though they'd be in more temperate zones then if we're gonna
Yeah,
have them around.
like
Just
Greece.
yeah, hanging out, hunting,
Yeah,
hunting
Mediterranean.
once a month, hunting once a month, getting their big old wildebeest on or whatever.
Grecians.
Yeah. Well, you know,
I,
that's I
I
mean, that's
miss
if that's their
Greece.
thing. I mean, that's not my thing.
Who doesn't like a good Greek man?
I mean, I do enjoy a good Greek man. All right.
Mhm.
So what else we got to talk
Inconclusive.
what do we have to talk about with the so inconclusive on the blood typing.
Yeah, I would say probably cold-blooded, just
Yeah.
because reptile, and
Yeah.
that would allow them to be more sneaky in the sense that that they could, that'd be kind of good because they would also be able to hide better for longer periods of time, which also would probably be good against hunters and stuff like that. Because hey, I'm going to be over here in this really dark area that's spooky and scary, not bother anybody for a while, and then go out and hunt. So that'd be nice to have like larger brains and
Yeah.
stuff like that, so you can actually plan ahead and do things.
Nice. So in conclusion, Gorgons, you naysaying the Gorgons, you naysay the dragons.
I'm sorry, that's the point of my thing.
You yes say the werewolves.
Hey.
You yes say the werevins, and you yes say the lamias.
Yes,
Excellent.
lamias make sense. Wyverns make more sense.
Okay, fine. Because I'm gonna find the silver lining. That's my goal at the end of this, to find the silver lining.
He really wants that cleavage.
Fine. The next thing, well, not the next thing, because the first thing will be something else. So, for our next 2 episodes, I'm gonna be saying that we're gonna be going into mermaids.
Ooh.
We're gonna have 2 episodes. This isn't
Ooh.
not gonna be the same episode. We're not going like part 1, part 2 of mermaids. It's gonna be fish-based mermaids
Mm.
and mammalian mermaids. So
There,
two different
see?
perspectives.
Fair.
Still
Okay.
probably won't have breasts.
Mm.
Not the way that you're thinking, because that's also, if you're in the cold water, you don't want a lot of dangly parts.
Speak for yourself.
I was just thinking whales.
Yeah.
And
Whales,
Whales.
yeah. How do whales produce milk? Do they have
We'll find-
giant pendulous
I didn't
boobs?
say they were going to have pendulous boobs.
We'll
That's
talk about
covered
that
by
next
two
time.
Yeah,
clamshells.
we'll talk about that next time.
Yeah, we got this good. A Real Creature Feature is created by Matt Kuklinski, starring Matt Kuklinski, Michael Seaman, and Dean Snow. Any questions, comments, artwork, or general inquiries can be sent to realcreaturefeature@gmail.com. You can view any submitted fan art and pictures on our Instagram at A Real Creature Feature. Some episodes were recorded weeks in advance due to our current sporadic recording schedule. Any comments left will be seen and addressed at some point, and you will be credited unless you tell us you wish to remain anonymous. If you like the podcast, please leave a review on the podcast app that works best for you. It really helps us out. Also, tell your friends, enemies, and total strangers about the podcast. They might enjoy it too, and that can bring us all closer together.